starting.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Trista.
Welcome. Hello, welcome. Nice to see everybody. We're all over again, the world and in different locations today. So I'm happy to be hosting this well-read number 7. Quite exciting, actually, to be thinking about the art of gathering while gathering virtually. And having a continued gathering. That's number 7. So it's really thrilling to be part of this group. And I just want to say a big thank you to my lovely colleagues here on the screen and our guest today, Catherine. So before we begin, what we'd love to do is first do a really short introduction, where you are in the world and who you are, and then we'll get right into talking about the book. So maybe Rania, I know you're in an airport, but hopefully there won't be any announcements as you make your introduction.
Hey, so excited to be here with you today. Good morning, good evening, as we always cite good timings. Rania Sawalhi, work in Qatar Foundation, originally from Jordan, currently in the airport heading to Turkey, and enjoying this kind of gathering with you all to share experiences from different continents. And we will share some of our work and what type of gatherings we also have. Back to you, Andrea or Maria, would you like to proceed?
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrea. I'm in Sydney. We are currently going through floods again in Sydney, unfortunately, but I'm hoping everyone's keeping safe and well. I am doing my doctorate in the role of coaching early career teachers and currently working at GCI as a facilitator and coaching people around Australia, educators. So great to have you all back again. It's been a while.
It has. Maria.
Yeah, hi everyone. Good morning from London. It's Maria here. I'm an academic member of staff of the University of Southampton. Well, I'm based in London right now. I work from home today. And I'm very happy to see you all again.
So happy to see you, Maria, and a good health. So that's great to see. I'm Trista Holwick, and I am in Toronto currently, usually in Ottawa, but I'm in a backyard in Toronto. It's absolutely beautiful here. The birds are chirping. It's early morning. So those of you who are in my neck of the woods, thanks for getting up. And I'm leading a number of projects. My most exciting one right now is the Canadian Playful Schools Network, where we're trying to bring learning through play into Canadian context and learn about what that means for educators in grades 4 to 8. So that's really exciting for this school year. And we have a very special guest with us today. So Catherine, do you want to introduce yourself? We're thrilled to have you joining us.
Thank you for including me in your group. I describe myself as a pracademic. I've spent half my life exactly in academia and at the system level, and then half of it in schools. I'm very interested in anything to do with innovation and design. And I love exploring different learning environments, whether they be physical or psychological, and different modes of gathering adults. So this book kind of was quite spot on for me. So happy to contribute.
Great, we're so happy to have you here and to share your insights and thoughts and to join the conversation. So our book today, perhaps if someone is able to put up the PowerPoint, we'll do a really brief check-in. So our book is The Art of Gathering, Create Transformative Meetings, Events, and Experiences. And I was just wondering, does anyone have the same text on their book, or do they have a different one?
I've got a different one.
I saw that.
Yeah, how we meet and why it matters.
Yeah,
nice. Nice. And
so can you share the PowerPoint? Because I'm
sorry, Andrea, it doesn't allow me to upload the PowerPoint.
Okay, I'll deal with that in the background.
Do you mind? Yeah, it doesn't allow me to upload.
So The Art of Gathering. This is a book that was recommended to me. Actually, I saw it on a number of different coaching podcasts a year or so ago, people who are thinking about, actually must have been pre-pandemic, let's be honest, when the art of gathering meant something different. And so I'm really interested to think about, you know, from our current lens, and one of the pieces that I've been thinking about is like, why this book and why now? So thinking about, as we return to gathering, maybe some of the aspects that we have forgotten when it comes to gathering in person. And I don't know if anyone else has had that experience, but it hasn't been as smooth as I thought it would be. That I'm now used to gathering virtually, and that there's a way of acting between the two. So I'm really interested to hear some of the insights of everyone here. But as we go through, generally we have a framework that we use, that are 3 basic questions. So we use the questions of what struck you from the book, what stood out from you, questions that you're still thinking about as well, and anything else that you want to talk about. So perhaps I'm going to open it up to the question. What wanted to alert people to let them know. I might be able to pop up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you can
share my screen here.
I can't share my screen,
that,
unfortunately.
Okay, is it working? Can you
Yeah.
share it with my, okay, great.
Yep, you can put it in presenter mode. Yep, perfect.
Yep. So as we're getting started, we have just a quick catch to see who our participants are and where you are located. So we have this QR code and this email or this website, it's just a Padlet that you can add yourself to. That would be really great. We'll put that in the link in the chat as well as we go on. I wanted to point out that there are some great talks by Priya Parker, the author of our book today. If you are interested, I've had a chance to watch like a few of her interviews that expand a little bit more into the why for her of the book, and where her background is coming from her family background, being in 2 different religions and realities and growing up in 2 different worlds, and how she brings that into her her way of working with people, but very much worth checking out some of these TED Talks. And she's had some great discussions around virtual gatherings like during the pandemic. So thinking about this as well. And I also wanted to point out this quote that is actually just in the cover of mine, but it really spoke for me, you know, why this book and why now. It's by Sherry Turkle, who, if you've read her book, Reclaiming Conversation, The Power of Talk in a Digital Age, is really worth considering. So she looks at from the tech perspective of why conversation really is important. And so if you think about here, you know, it's all these ideas about things that you think you know, and then when you're reading your work, you're like, do I actually know this? Am I thinking about this when we gather? And maybe why some things don't go as smoothly as we had hoped, as I would love to talk about a little bit today. So it's a passion for successful encounters enlivens every page, and that's it, making every chance to gather meaningful. So these are our 3 questions that I talked about. So what resonated, stood out for you, what spoke to you, and we really do choose every time a book written by a woman, really focused on leadership or something that we can take into our work in leadership, and then any questions and issues that emerged for you.
I would like to start.
Yeah, let me just stop the share here. Go ahead, Rania.
It's really interesting, you know, starting from the idea of the book itself, you know, the art of gathering. Sometimes we just, you know, jump into acting without thinking about those kind of basic questions or assuming. And she had mentioned lots of about those or tips, or, you know, the impact of how we act and how we plan. When and why are we gathering? It's also a gathering today, you know, like we're planning for this. I would like also to share one of her quotes that I believe that everyone has the ability to gather when. You don't have to be an extrovert. You know, that's really important, because sometimes we assume or we have specific assumptions or expectations, but that's not the case. It always goes to planning, especially that we're working all in education and have lots of gatherings, regardless if we're implementing this within our social life or within any type of activities that we're doing. Even during funeral or kind of loss, that's something also we need to think about, even if we might not have time to think about. So I like the way how she had organized the books and started sharing some of the tips, either from her personal life or from her professional life, and just to help us to reorganize or to re-explore options that we sometimes do not utilize well or do not focus well during our meetings or gatherings. So this is basically, sometimes, yes, we need to have some books like this, even if we think that it's kind of simple or commonly done or practiced, but those kind of meetings could be utilized or reinforced in a different aspect to reunion or even to discover our strength or to focus on things that would make everyone even happier and enjoy those kinds of times and moving forward within their life. So this is my first comment and things like lecture.
I'd love to ask you, Rania, is there a tip that stood out to you in particular?
Yes, when she discussed and said about sometimes we just want them to chill and we don't want to plan that, but that might not be. And you know, just we have lots of experiences about, you know, the conferences that we shared and we've been through, but even moving the sofa, you need to think about. Excuse us, because Trista and I have an experience with moving sofas and shifting the places and locations going back to Morocco 2020.
Yeah, every decision is a decision and thinking about the purpose. So yeah, and whether or not it's matching. Yeah, thanks, Rania. Andrea, do you want to pop in and your thoughts? You're on mute, so.
Always got to do it once. From the what to the why, what is your purpose, right? I think that sort of resonated with me at the very beginning was, you know, why are you coming together? The one thing I sort of thought about was putting the boundaries in and keeping it personal and making it intimate still, because I know recently we've organized a group of people from our cohort to all have a writing day, and other people said, oh, could we come and join? And I felt a little bit guilty about saying, well, actually, you know, it's the cohort. But then when I read this book, I'm like, I'm trying to protect the group that we are, you know, and I thought, well, okay, there's a pro, you know what I mean? It was that balance of feeling a little bit guilty that you're not opening it up to everybody, but you need to keep your boundaries in place to keep that intimate relationship that's already been built. So I thought that was, it was really good for me to read that because I didn't feel so guilty then.
Yeah, and it's that it really has respect for the participants, that you're doing it to protect your participants, right? So it's not just that you're being mean or you're like strict, but it's actually because you know what can happen when you open it up.
Yeah, it was that what she said was the protect, the equalize, and connect your guests. And I thought those three words really, I thought, oh, I've never really thought about it in depth this much before. So I've got to say, at the beginning of the book, I was feeling a little bit sad because we haven't had the opportunity to meet. I don't do a lot of dinner parties. I don't go to many parties. So I sort of felt like even the teach meets we've had over the last few years, that's all been eroded, I suppose, because of COVID and things that, you know, been going on. But when it came to the end where it came into the conferences and things like that, I really drew on that. I thought that was wonderful.
It's nice to be sitting and reading this actually as we re-enter, because it'll give us a chance to think about these gatherings too, as we start to plan. Catherine, how about you? I'd love to hear what stood out for you.
It's interesting. I can resonate with you've just gone through. You've gone through my checklist of purpose. Yep, I identified with protecting the participants, particularly her example. I thought that was an excellent example in that chapter. The
you
thing
want
that
to talk about the example? Sorry, just do you want to explain the example?
Well, I think Andrea sort of captured that one quite nicely. But you know, there was that gentleman, I think, who had some issues that he may not have wanted to share with the broader audience. And it was just such a quick, and that's what I kind of liked about her approach. The anecdotes to support the general principle, to reinforce it at the start of it. She's got quite a nice, albeit a bit repetitive, but good repetitive. You know, she's got a good way of making things a habit. I guess I had the luxury of trying every one of her principles in between, because Andrea told me about this a long time ago. So I've actually tried to arrange a meeting that actually used all 8 of the principles with mixed success. The one that I found probably the most powerful was the cold open. I really loved the paradox of that one, the cold open. So, you know, trying to get people immediately into the mood. The thing that resonated with me most was not starting stuff with boring logistics, and not finishing with the endless thank yous, patting yourself on the back. It just, I thought, finally, somebody's going to put that out there, because nobody really enjoys them. So, you know, why tick off 90% of your audience with that from the start? So I tried the cold open, I tried the create the heat, but it was the cold open that stuck with me.
That's so important to think about. What I was thinking about is all the things that we've done that didn't follow the cold open. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's
oh,
interesting,
right,
Catherine.
I also, may I just say,
Yeah, go ahead, Maria.
it's interesting. I mean, I don't want to sound critical. I mean, I found it an interesting read during a very busy period of time. It's light and written in a simple, well, not simplistic, but simple and straightforward way. I don't want to sound critical, but when reading the book, you know, initially I thought, oh, what's new about it, you know? But I have to say that the more I was engaged, you know, in the reading, the more I realized that, oh, okay, that's, you know, it's a well-written guidebook, which gives some really useful examples of a human-centered approach, how we gather, why we're gathering, and so on and so forth. For me, it was more as a good reminder, if you like, of what we do or what we should do as hosts of a gathering, as practitioners when we are arranging a meeting, as, you know, in any role really that we have, in order to be able to maximize the chance of holding meaningful, really meaningful gatherings, and creating opportunities of the people who are involved in those gatherings to benefit, you know, and not just thinking, oh dear, oh gosh, you know, that's another business meeting, that's another social event, what a waste, if you see what I mean. So yeah, and I'm happy to share some of the really interesting examples that the author gives in a minute.
Thanks, Maria. Rania, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I wanted to comment on something that Catherine had mentioned, but starting first with Maria. It's really interesting because sometimes, you know, coming from an academic background or focusing on research, sometimes we just have specific expectations, while we need to go back to basics sometimes to make use of some of the meaningful kind of gatherings or meetings, or just to have kind of a checklist to make sure that are we really meeting the objectives and making sure that we're benefiting everyone or engaging everyone to a specific degrees with coming from different backgrounds. And I think that also could apply for virtual or for the meetings coming after COVID, because many are facing some kind of symptoms, you know, that they're afraid of going back socializing, or sometimes what things are we going to discuss, and those kind of tips. But Catherine, I found it's really interesting that you had followed the 8 principles. And you know, did you
and it was
go
online
one by one, or how did you think about it?
I just committed to trying as many as I could in an online format. So I shook it up. I made it a dinner party, online dinner party. Everyone had to get takeaway and sit in front of their chomping away.
Online dinner party.
Sorry, Catherine, I want to blog about this. I don't think it's just enough. I want to actually read about it all.
So it was online dinner party. The only criteria was you had to be a realistic optimist. So there was no fancy criteria, but quite purposeful. There was a serious agenda, a purpose there, but the entree was the reading, which was quite a pithy, controversial. So I created the heat before they even arrived. And then if you accepted that reading and still came along for dinner, not knowing what dinner was going to look like, I thought, you're my sort of guys. We need this, because it was about a very innovative sort of challenge. And then just tried to be the chill host, or explain that I was the host. There was no super chickens here. Get into host mode, but not abdicate leadership of it. So when we did go off the rails, which we did when you're having wine over dinner, it was purposeful. We were on track. We covered a lot. 1.5 hours, everyone knew they would just sign off. They could just peel off. 1.5 hours in, it wasn't going to drag on. There was no big introductions. Everyone had to go. We did whip around the dinner table to find out something that somebody didn't know. There were people who didn't know each other in it. So tried to, put them as many as possible in there. But it was, the most interesting thing was just watching people kind of lapse back into the old way of doing things. So as you mentioned there, Maria, people wanted, it was one of the challenges was to have them learning to do something rather than learning about it. So as a lecturer, I tend to do a lot of learn about type intros, and so there was no intro, like they were going to learn about this book, every single principle, by doing it without explanation, right? And you could just feel the tension though, because they wanted to go back into the intro. They wanted to go back into thanking you at the end, that sort of, and you sort of thought, no, you're going to learn by doing this, right? But we've got a lot of old habits in this space. That's what I realized. Like I could feel the tension as we let go of all the habits she mentions. We just, yeah, it's new habits.
And allow me also just for one question. When you tried this without telling them that what they're going to expect or what they're going through, did they expect, or did you ask them about how did you?
Well, one of the things she says is, you got to be careful what you call your group. So I called it collective flow, because that's what I wanted, collective flow. I called myself a host. I said, I'm just hosting it. I'm not leading it. I'm hosting a gathering at dinner in this way with some people that you may or may not know. So they learned about it in that way, and came along once we'd created the heat with the controversial reading. But at the end, I revealed where they could find out more about what we'd been doing, right? So I promised them from the start that we were going to do it in this learn to way. And if they wanted to take it on board, they could take it. And I would provide the reference. I did combine it. I don't know whether you guys know her, but Nancy Klein has a book called Time to Think. And I found those two, it kind of filled in some gaps in both books.
Okay. Do they contradict each other, or do they complement?
I found they complement
each other.
I find her a bit dry and hard to sell. I find her easy to sell, but not quite as rigorous. So by the time, I think people will gel with either of those, depending on what sort of, if you're more learn about, you'll love this. If you're more learn to.
Doing it. Yeah. Yeah. I also like the idea, Catherine, of pulling back. And as the author says in the book, because it creates that space and how you call it, the vacuum for other people to fill in.
Yes.
So I really like that idea, and also I think it goes back to the role, our role as a host of that gathering, no matter whether it is a dinner, a virtual dinner gathering, or I don't know, a conference gathering, or whatever it is. It's really important to I like that term, equalize the guests.
Yes.
I love that, that term, and the fact that in gatherings we should probably start considering having no hierarchies,
just no super chicken.
No, exactly.
Margaret Heffernan.
Yeah, living. I like the term, like leaving your title and your status at the door. And when I was trying to, in my attempt to think whether and how this applies to our professional lives, for example, I was like, I thought, for instance, in some international conferences, for example, since somebody mentioned about conferences, it's really impressive when we see some like-minded people, like-minded practitioners and scholars, senior or more junior than us, who are living their titles and status, outside of the door. And this is really impressive because this creates a more relaxing atmosphere, if you like, and it makes us feel more welcomed in that community.
I've got to
So,
agree
yeah.
with you on that, Maria, because that was at ICSE. You know, you're sitting next to somebody that you're referencing and you're thinking, I actually have the opportunity to sit here. And I'm
Exactly.
like, oh, but that
Exactly.
humility is there. But I was just,
Yeah.
so while Catherine took all of that and applied it, what I did was retrospectively looked back at what meetings that worked for me. And I was thinking, Marsha Tate, I went to a conference, an NCTM conference in the States, and she greeted me at the door, and there was probably 300 people in sitting there. And I went, oh, that's lovely, a person greeting you, making sure that you're at the right room. She was actually the presenter. And for me, that was like, what a welcome, right? It was an amazing, like, you know how you have one of those presenters who just, yeah, that was my one person. And I thought the way she even started and she did all of those things. Parsi, when I did it, we did a unit at the university. He brought everybody champagne at the end, right? And we had a group photo. So that at the end of the unit, we had that one glass of champagne, but we had a group photo, and we still, you know, that really finished off that unit really well. And then I thought of, this is funny, I don't know why, but Dame Edna Everidge. Do you all know Dame Edna Everidge, right? So we were in Seattle, and my husband and I, I'll share a photo later, but we were pulled on stage to have marriage counseling. And it was so in front of all these people. Now, everybody got to know us on stage. At the end of the night, when people were leaving, they were saying, bye, Andrew, bye, Andrea. Like, it was like everybody knew us. And I just thought Dame Edna brought in the audience. There was people in the audience. We all got to, we found out a little bit of information about them. It was just amazing to tell the stories. And that was something Parsi said to me once. I said, when I interviewed him for Connect the Docs, I said, I never knew that about you. And he goes, people have to take the time to ask. And a lot of people have a lot of stories, but we don't take the time to ask. So a lot of the things that she was saying, I was thinking retrospective, oh, that's right. That's why it was so important to me. But now I sort of feel like connected with.
Yeah, and I was thinking a lot about the, we were talking about ICSE, which is one of the conferences, Catherine, that's how we all met actually. So it was born out of our time together at the ICSE conference, International Congress for School Effectiveness and Improvement. But I was also really struck by what a lost opportunity many of these conferences are to really build these moments, like to thought before they happen, either accidentally or sheer by chance, or you're in some of the social events, but how really thinking about the gathering and the purpose and providing an opportunity for people to connect, to make these stories real. And even the moderation, that stood out to me too. Often thinking about the role as facilitator and how to moderate and connecting it back to the audience. I think that's another missed opportunity that struck me that I need to think about. You know, how when you take a question, it's a moment to also link back to the broader audience, not just that one question asker, so that you can bring that audience together again. So thinking from this opening, like you said, Andrea, connecting, making sure you've introduced, you meet, and then all the way through the process. So I find sometimes I'm on autopilot when I'm facilitating. I just want to, you know, okay, this is my role, but we need to be stepping back and remembering the purpose. So I cut you off, Rania.
It might be good to consider to apply all these steps in the network meetings at ICSE in Chile.
Yeah, it sounds good.
The most challenging one that probably gets back to your first question, Trista, is whether you're 3D or 2D, because we're always face to face. I find it have to say 3D or 2D. That the presence. She has a whole section on presence. I think that's our biggest challenge, because I multitask through every single meeting I attend. I do. I've never been able to get through a meeting without multitasking. I'm used to that at home now. You know, like I can have all the stuff ready for a meeting that I'm going to do in the boring bits. And that's my new habit, you know, like, and so even at conferences, everyone's there to network and socialize. They won't even attend all of the sessions, right? So they're not even physically present. So, you know, Andrea, you mentioned one of the best conferences I went to for 20 years, every 2 years was in Iowa. And part of it was like we were on a big ship. It was the most boring town in Iowa, beautiful, but boring. Iowa City. There was nothing else to do but the conference, and you got to know everyone at the conference and you ate with everyone at the conference. You weren't trying out the latest restaurant someone had mentioned. And so every 2 years, it was like we went on a cruise together and we got to know each other so intimately, and we would argue about the previous lecture or, all through dinner or while you were standing in the queue. So she's got an important point there about how do we get people to be present now when we're all used to this kind of, multiple purposes, happening. It's harder. It's definitely harder. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Rania.
Yep. First, for our audience, Andrea had launched an initiative called Connect the Dots, just to highlight, and if you want to mention this, Andrea, about how you interview people who had graduated, talk about their PhD or doctorate level and what kind of tips and things, and we highly recommend if you can see the videos recorded on the channel, if you can paste the link, that would be also helpful for our audience, and we can add it within our channel. And you also had flagged or highlighted something that's really important. If we can have kind of checklist for conference organizers to make sure that they are benefiting with such tips. From EXI, for example, there are lots of engagement opportunities, and in every session we make sure that we get to know people around us, or we're present, or to have this kind of gathering tips. But that might not be the case in other conferences, or the opposite, that other conferences had something could be added or could be highlighted how to meet within EXI or within other sessions, or maybe webinars, either online or face-to-face. And I think now people are suffering. One of the studies that one of the teams we're working on is how people are having symptoms because of the online and the face, the kind of spaces and the pictures, because that's not the ordinary way when we meet, or the spaces that would be around us. So even kind of those tips, I think it also could be communicated and shared. It might be simple at the beginning, but it would be helpful for people to double check what kind of things that they're doing, and to focus on the important. Any decision, with the arrangement or the preparation would also be helpful.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
That's where her pop-up. That's where her pop-up rules would come in handy with that, because you could, work out, is it going to be with with video on, video off, if people have had too much time on video. The pop-up, rather than having the same old etiquette every time you meet, would be helpful.
I love the pop-up rules. And, as I was thinking about the rules, it really has expectations for participants. Like, one thing is, it's not just about the organizers, right? But it was really clear that as a participant, you understand the purpose, you agree with the purpose, and you come prepared. So it really shifts the way that we all interact in these spaces. And I was thinking a lot about, being really clear about the purpose, but also how we are expecting our members, either it's like the toast, the 15 toasts that she talks about, don't come prepared with your speech. You really do need to think about vulnerability and being open to this. And for me, that was one of the things I definitely, and I know, Maria, you were talking a little bit about some of the critical elements too in the book potentially, but it really is for one specific group. Like, you have to be more open to that type of gathering. There are a lot of people that are more comfortable with a passive, or you're in a meeting, I just want the meeting, I don't want to have to be participating necessarily. I was thinking a lot about how I do a lot of work with maybe like less traditional ways of working together, which is not always comfortable for everybody. And just being really clear on that, it gave permission, I think, to it, in the sense that you have a purpose and stick to it. Like, don't give up halfway. Like, when a couple of those examples, when the people got nervous, when there's a little bit of resistance, and then they sort of drop back, and then it fell apart, because you have to commit. You have to commit to this decision of bringing the heat, or choosing conversations that aren't always simple. Or like creating that little bit of tension, and who you're choosing and how you were acting. but it's not always comfortable for everyone. And I was thinking a lot about my husband in this while reading this book, that these are not the gatherings he would be happy attending, you know, so, and if this was part of the process, how he would respond. And so I was wondering whether or not you thought about that as well. Some of the people in your lives that maybe wouldn't
Yes,
be
definitely.
keen on
Yes,
joining.
definitely.
Yeah.
And for me, I was even thinking about, you know, the context and some of the religious issues that we also need to take care of, even cultures from country to a country, or even a place to a place, or maybe for some tribes. That's something really need to be thought about before we think of applying some of the principles or some of the tips that she's sharing. It might be kind of practicing and communicating in a way, just to simplify those kind of practices and how we're expecting and engaging them. And going back to conferences, you know, like Bilmas, they always have kind of a table of non-alcohol or something for, or kind of information about the food that had been served. So even sometimes humanizing our practices and collecting information about the needs and the expectation of people coming, that's something also we need to consider. But going back to husbands, I will just leave that for a moment.
Can I
Sorry,
just
Maria.
following up Trista's comment? I think it links nicely to what what's the name Priya is referring to as a good controversy. So because she says that the good controversy, you know, is that kind of contention that helps people grow and, you know, benefit really in what they're doing. And okay, in a professional environment, I can see, I think I feel more comfortable to, if you like, embrace the healthy, good controversy, you know, because and academia, for example, is about, you know, agreeing and disagreeing and challenging each other's ideas and so on and so forth. So harmony, as Priya says here, is not necessarily, you know, through the what's the name? It's not the only value of, you know, gathering and so on and so forth, because the healthy, the good controversy can help us re-examine, you know, our positionality, our values, and so on and so forth. As a practitioner, I feel more comfortable in creating the space in the gatherings to, you know, for healthy controversy to arise, if you like. But in personal, in more social gatherings, I don't feel very comfortable to do that. But of course, in our professional or business, you know, lives and so on, I agree that this controversy can help us as professionals to move forward and agree and disagree and move forward in our thinking, as long as we don't just disagree for the sake of disagreement, if you see what I mean, because we have seen that happening in business meetings, for example. Yeah, but applying that to practice, for example, in my teaching, for example, I try to engage the students with some controversial issues through a dialogue-based approach, because it's more about the philosophical dialogue. It's more about the philosophical dialogue of these controversial issues. I think for me, it's more about enabling us as a group of students and tutors and so on to have a constructive conversation, exchanging ideas, having diverse group of people challenging each other, you know. Sorry, I don't
I think that's why I liked
Interesting,
Catherine's,
Maria.
because Catherine sent out that reading.
Yes.
And people were aware of what's coming. Do you know what I mean? Whereas I feel like, I remember I was at a dinner and there was no conversation. There was very varied age groups. And I thought, I'm going to ask them the question, which generates, I feel like a pretty good conversation. It's like, if you could invite 5 people, dead or alive, to a dinner party, who would you invite and why? So usually, you know, the history teacher goes for a person in history and they explain why. And you learn a little bit about the person, but one person went, well, all my relatives who are dead. And it just killed the moment. And I thought, oh no, you know, and they went, well, don't change the rules now. And they got all really cranky. And I went,
Yeah.
this isn't going. And as a host, I just went, Okay, let's just let that one go. But I've seen it work beautifully because you get to hear about, if they want to invite an author or a previous president, or, you got to know a little bit about the person and why they were choosing that person to come to their dinner table. But it didn't fall. And I went, no, I'll just pull back on that one. Read the room, right?
It's interesting because we're talking about professional and personal. And those are both different ways to gather. And I think if I take this book, it's all of those gatherings need to be purposeful. Like it doesn't matter. And I was like, oh my gosh, can you not just have like people around for coffee anymore? Like like every
and that's where this one was interesting, because this one says any gathering again can be a listening environment. And I think to address your point, Maria, you cannot be curious when you're defensive. We know that. That's just a given. And yet in academia, we're often in that adversarial sort of pose. And then you find it's less interesting because nobody's curious, genuinely curious about the adversary's point of view, right? So in time to think, and the way that I popped up the rules at the dinner party was I borrowed the rules from Time to Think. And the rules there are, over the 1.5 hours, everyone is guaranteed from the very minute they arrive to have equal time. So you are timing your contributions. There's no super chicken. Everyone at the end of 1.5 hours walks out knowing they all had equal time to be heard and to listen. And it changes everything. It changes that whole adversarial tone because you're not allowed to rebut anyone. You're not allowed to interrupt anyone. There are just some nice, if you like, rules that just get people out of that adversarial expectation that you come, if you're like me, you come with your case for change, you come with your case prepared, you don't come prepared to listen as well as you should. So that they complement, but they address what you said, Maria, about, how do you get past that defensiveness, especially if you're trying to heat it up? Yeah.
I love that. I was thinking, as you just were speaking, Catherine, the importance of the circle process. So you use the circling process a lot. And I know when I was teaching a course, and the first time students entered, there's no furniture. It's in a circle. And it was really, really off-putting. And I know some of them in interviews after, because I followed to see, what was this experience like for you? Because not everyone signed up for that. They signed up for a regular course. And they thought in teacher ed, and you go in and you're like, and some of them were saying, like, I wanted out of there, like as fast as I could. I wanted to drop that course, but they stayed in, and it took some time. So some were full in right at the beginning, some took a little longer, but that process is unnerving. But it also provides opportunity for enough time. If everyone has a chance to work through, you don't comment on the one just before necessarily, or you don't hold on to that idea from like 12 people ago. The process itself as you move through it. So there are structures that are supportive of this, but it changes the way it works. And one thing I was really thinking about as we were going, and I love your input, as all of us have worked in education, doesn't this change the way we think about staff meetings in a school? Like how, those regular staff meetings, like, do we really use that time of gathering, which is often the only time that teachers and leaders all come together regularly, and how well do we use that time to create, a bit of heat, making sure people have like some sort of contribution, listening? Are we really thoughtful, or is it like delivery of a particular, instructions, etc.? So I was really, really thinking about a staff meeting. I'd love your input on like those regular gatherings. Go ahead, on.
There's two things. That walk with your feet, I wonder how that would work in a school, because a lot of the times you're sitting there and you're going, this could have been an email. This really could have been an email. And, they say bringing people together. Is it really important to bring people together if they don't really want to be there? And could it have been done in an email? Like, what's the purpose of the gathering? But I did wonder about that.
And are we overdosing on face-to-face now, is my question, as in 3D, when this could have been a really quick video conference. Instead, we've made people travel and probably twice as long traveling as they sit in a meeting sometimes, you know. So that's another dimension to that, new dimension to that. I like just what you said about staff meetings. One of the things we did at the dinner party is everyone had to spend 1 minute sharing the freshest thinking they heard from somebody else. That's how we left. What was the freshest thinking you heard from somebody else? Instead of, I'll have the final word, which some people at the dinner party were used to doing, it was quite, that really threw people to actually have to have, you know, carefully thought of, digested and praised someone else's great thinking. Was hard for some people.
Catherine, was it hard though for you to time everybody? Like, did that become a little bit of a...
I said I couldn't trust myself to, because I get too interested in the content. It's like proofreading. I'm hopeless. I get too interested in the content. But so I had someone actually just be a timer, and I said that would, and we all had to, you know, observe it, myself included, equal time the whole night. And yeah, so that was hard for, you know, initially people had to learn, because especially that's the beauty of Teams though, because when you had breakout opportunities to listen, were just shot out of the room, like mid-sentence, gone. So it lent a discipline that was actually quite fair. Otherwise you only hear one person, you know. That was good. It was good.
And that was
good.
Clear. Catherine, that was clear that people knew that time before coming.
Yeah, it takes one minute to explain that you're all going to, and it's a promise you give them. You'll all have equal time to listen and equal time to speak. I promise. But we have to stick to the rules for that to happen. So it was just what you said about, it was up to the participants to make that happen. Because if they didn't, then they would spoil it for somebody else.
But see, that's the difference, Catherine. You said it's benefiting, everybody gets the chance to speak, instead of saying, well, you can only speak for this amount of time. Do you know what I mean? It's turning it around to being...
Yeah, and you all get equal time to listen. How often have you heard people say that? Hardly anyone says that.
Yeah, I think it's important, just not only about listening, but it's about why are we listening, how are we listening, you know, not to reply or not to defend, but also to engage. That's another thing. I think also, ladies, we can utilize Twitter or hashtag just to hear also stories and examples from people around us about tips, how they can implement those principles.
So hashtag well read, WELREAD. It's in the chat as well from Andrea. Thank you. And I know I'm looking at the time, and I know we have lost Maria, who had a poor connection. She said a pop-up. She got spit out, kind of maybe like that dinner party. If you speak too long, you get spit out. But I think I would love to hear, as we sort of close up, and that idea of the freshest thinking. I haven't read the book, but Catherine, I am going to go and read that book right away. I did have a chance to work with Rachel Lofthouse, who introduced freshest thinking at the end of some of our facilitations, and it's I really enjoy, like, even for myself, what was my freshest thinking. So I'm going to ask everyone here to just share really briefly your freshest thinking, 30 seconds or less, about today, as we move into the final stages of our chat. So Andrea, what's your freshest thinking from conversation or the book?
I think what Catherine did was just apply it and put it in. So the next meeting I have, I'm going to not probably do all of the principles, but I'm going to just focus on one or two and make sure I do them well and really focus on them. So yeah, thanks, Catherine, for sharing that.
Catherine, your freshest thinking.
I'll back at you, Andrea. I liked the retrospective. You've made me think about that conference in Iowa that I love so much, and realize just how, when they're doing it so well, you're not aware of what they're doing so well. So I'm going to go back into that space. No.
You're back, Maria. We're just doing a last little freshest thinking. So some of your thoughts that you're leaving with from the book or from the conversation. And hopefully you can hear us okay, Maria? No, not yet. Rania, how about you?
I will resonate or echo what Andrea had mentioned. We might not have, to apply all the principles at once, especially in staff meetings. It could be gradual and focus on one by one, just to see what's the priority and how to make sure that everyone is engaged or on board. And also for the personal life.
but I think going back to the basics, having simple things as we're moving back from online to face, that's something also could be useful to rethink about utilizing those moments that we're having.
I'm really loving that we get multiple conversations happening through Rania. So we're hearing airplanes, so people who are gathering in different spaces as well.
I will never
so
forget
Maria,
this, trust me.
Maria, can you hear us?
Hi everyone. Sorry, I'm back now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're just doing our
Right.
last
I really
second.
like the idea of reverse engineer an outcome. And the author suggested, think of what you want to be different in your gathering, and work backward from that outcome. In business, we or in professional environment, we think we start with the outcome in mind, and this might be, I don't know, be good to apply to some other gatherings. I might have, consider to apply them in some social gatherings, So yeah, I really like that idea. And also what's the other one? What's the other ingredient of, what's the name, for a meaningful gathering? The other thing that she mentions about, sorry, let me, no ideas. No ideas. It's how, remember, no ideas. Okay. I'm trying to find it. Please, no ideas, please. We're gathering. I think that's the motto that she's using. Yeah, I like that in a personal, no, in a social gathering, if you like, within a social gathering context. I'm not sure whether this applies within a professional gathering, because we want to get the ideas from colleagues when we review our programs and so on and so forth. But I like I think as leaders, we might need to consider how we can keep a balance between getting some ideas from colleagues and creating that space and time for colleagues to share their experience, and we can learn from each other's experience, because these experiences of teaching or any other professional experience can help us feel more connected with what they're saying. So yeah,
well,
that's
I'm
all.
always,
and you too,
I'm always
Trista.
feeling more connected. Yeah, and very connected to all of you. So happy to be here. I think my freshest thinking today is, I'm going to take Catherine's providing heat in advance in a gathering and see, and really, I love that idea. Like, what would that look like? And making sure the expectations are clear to the participants, and also retaining the host's duty. So sometimes I think I let things just like set it up, now we'll see what happens, but continuing all the way through, that your role doesn't end, right? I'm leaving with that. So I want to share. Thank you.
Can I read just one thing out that I just loved? It's not about the connection to me. It's the psychological interstitching of the group that allows you and them to take risks, build together, and have the boldest version of whatever gathering they're having. I just think that's so nice, because it's not about you. A lot of people who are the host, it's about them, but it's not. It's about everybody else.
What page is that on, Andrea? What page?
It's beautiful.
283.
Oh, that's going to be my provocation for the next dinner party.
Yeah. Hopefully I'm invited.
We're all invited.
Amazing. Yeah.
So to end today, I want to share this picture came from the website from our author Priya Parker's website, and remember, The Art of Gathering. But and these are her opening statements, and I think they resonate still. The way we gather matters. Gathering, the conscious bringing together of people for a reason, shapes the way we think, feel, and make sense of our world. So important to remember, like the gatherings that we have and why we do it. And our next book, really excited to see what happens here, is Future Shaper: How Leaders Can Take Charge in an Uncertain World. So thinking about all of the different learnings that we've had across all of our books, we hope you'll save the date. So 3rd of October, 2022. we'll be talking about Future Shaper, and we look forward to having you join us. Any final comments from my lovely friends online here?
No, I just love seeing you all again.
Mhm.
I
It
love
was
that
great to see
conversation.
you. Yeah, same here. It was a lovely gathering.
Lovely.
Yeah, from everywhere.
We
I
had a
just noticed
purpose.
that. Yeah, I just noticed that Catherine was, I think, sending only for panelists. So some of the tips might not be shared with everyone that had joined or attended with us. So apologies for this. We might just share them now or later via the hashtag.
Amazing.
I
And
really
think
enjoyed
one of
this,
the requests-
despite moving between gates, but this is really enjoyable.
At least you're making your flight. This is all that matters, Rania. And I think one of the requests we had in the chat was to think about our pop-up rules. So those of you who are trying some of these pop-up rules or seeing things that work, sharing them and learning from and with one another is always key. So hashtag well read. We look forward to connecting with you all. And thank you to our friend Catherine for joining us and sharing her insights and trying the principles in action. I think that was such a great contribution. So grateful for you, Catherine, and to all my friends.
I don't think I'm going to be as ambitious with the next title. That looks that looks huge.
We'll see. We'll see. Well, have a great day, evening, morning,
too.
everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye, Catherine. Bye. Bye,
Thank you.
colleagues.
Thank you,
Bye.
Catherine. Thanks, everyone. Thanks.